In this tutorial, I will take you through how to send email attachment with Springboot. First, we need to create a project by visiting Spring Initializer website. This is a web-based tool that helps you to kickstart a Springboot project. So we are going to visit here. Next, I'm going to enter the details. First, we need to select the Gradle version, the Java version, and the Springboot version. On my machine, I'm currently working with the Java version 17. So first, I'll enter the group name. So this will be the base package of the application. So I'm gonna set it like this. .mail sender. So this you can give it any name that you want. Artifact will be the name of your project, that is your artifact ID. So I'm gonna call it demo email with attachment. I'll keep the name as same. Let me just correct the spelling here, and then I'll give it a demo project for Springboot for sending email with attachment. So this will be the name of my package. I'll keep it simple like this. Once you've done that, select your packaging as JAR file, or if you're interested in running it as a WAV file. For me, I'll pick a JAR file and then I maintain the version. You can also explore here. Remember, this will give you a preview on how the project looks like. I'll also add a few dependencies. First one is Spring Web. I'll add the web dependency. This allows us to define RESTful APIs. I'll also add Lombok. This one is helps us to define annotations so that we don't have to define getters and setters for properties. And lastly, I'll define a Java mail sender dependency. So these are the three dependencies that I need to be able to send email. Once you've done this, you can click on generate and you'll be able to download a zipped project that you can now import in your IDE. Once we have imported our project on your IDE, so this is how the structure looks like. So this is a Gradle project. You can see here we have our dependencies and we are running Springboot version 3.2.1. We have our test package here. We have our main class that runs the application. So I'm just going to define some extra packages here and define our new classes. So first I'm going to define a package, and let's name this package control us. I'm also going to define a package that will store Pojo objects, so I'll call it data. And I'm going to define here a package called mailer that will store our main services. So here I'll define a controller class. So let's call it demo email sender. Demo email, I can call it demo email controller. So this one I'm going to annotate it with a Spring controller annotations. So here I'm going to define a class. Let's call it an email request. So this is going to be a Pojo or a plain Java object. Then here I'm going to define two classes. One of them will be an interface, and I'll call it demo email service. So this is gonna be a simple application that doesn't have any database connection or connectivity. I'm gonna define another class demo email service implementation. So it is usually best practice to separate your implementation from your actual from your definition. So in this case it becomes our interface, and this will implement that interface. So here we need to annotate it with a Spring annotation of that service so that it is discoverable through dependency injection. And then I'll have this as implements demo email service. Okay, here I'll define one function. So first let me build on this. So here I'll have of course I'll just implement serializable here, serializable class, and then I'll also make sure that I annotate it with the Lombok annotation of data, so that by default it generates two string methods and the getters and setters. So for this one I want it to have two properties. One of them is private, it's a string message, and then I'll have also so what we intend to build is to have someone send a request, a JSON request with a message and the recipient email, and it will attach a file and send it to them. So here I'll have maybe a recipient. Okay, so here we don't need to define getters and setters, considering we are using Lombok, which will generate the same for you. Now under the email service I'll just define a method. Okay, so here I'll have a method implemented, defined, sorry. So I'll have a void method, so this method doesn't return anything. I'll do send email, and I'll have email requests, and the email request, so this is the object that we had defined earlier. And under here is where we will have our actual method implementation on this function. Okay, so I'll also need to define a folder in the parent project folder. So I'll define a folder called let me call it attachments, or let me call it uploads, and this will contain one file that we need to send on email. So this can be any file. For now I'll just create a file named filenames.csv, and it will contain some names. So I'll just define name and some contact. Let me say it has some emails. Okay, and I'll define a name here called John Doe, and email is johndoe@home.com. This is just dummy information. I can define another name, Elon Musk, and then I can do emask@x.com. So what our application will do is, when somebody sends a request to our controller, it will go pick this file, attach it on email, and send it. Okay, so that is done. So next I'm going to define my controller, or how I want it to look like. So for the controller as well, we need to define some annotations here. So first we need to tell it that this is a REST controller. I also need to define the base URL. So I'll define it with a request mapping. So I'll have my base URL there, and I'll say it as API. Okay, I'm gonna also need to inject my service here. So I'll do email service, and define it as demo email service. This will allow us to access the functions that we've implemented on the service. So under this controller, I'll also define a constructor. So remember, in Spring Boot, it is better to inject your services through a default through a constructor instead of doing the auto wiring here. So in the latest version, it is recommended. You can see that you'll get a warning that field injection is not recommended. Instead, you use a constructor instead. So that's why we've done that. So it's best practice to do that. I'm also going to define post mapping with our URL. So this is what the user will put as the URL. So let me call it send mail. And then I'll define the function here. I'll do response entity. So I expect it to return some string. So remember, this is for demo purposes only. Great. I'll define also the request body, and what we expect as the request body is our email requests. Okay. Then I'll do this. Then I'll invoke my service. Let's send email, and I'll pass it to the object of email request. And then I'll just return a new entity, response entity. So for this case, I'll just return a string that says email sent with an HTTP status code of OK. Okay. So this is what I return. Yeah, so we've defined our controller, we've defined our service. So remember, there is something that is still missing here, and that is the implementation of our function. So this is where we'll go in and implement the details of our function. So we are going to go ahead and proceed with our implementation. So first we have to create, of course, an instance. We can create an instance of the Java mail sender here. So I'll just create an instance sender. So I'll create an object. An object here, call it mail sender. So this is that I'll set up. This is what allows us to define the properties of the email. So first we have to set up the hosts. So for instance, I'll do mail sender. Let's set mail sender dot okay. Implementation, I made a mistake here. Set host, so I'll set the host here. So you can set any host. So this is your domain.com. You also need to set the port. Set port. So since I'll be using TLS enabled port, so you can set your port here. So I'll put the default port as 465. So usually these properties, it is important that you set them in your application properties. That is the best practice, instead of hard coding them on the code. So I'm using this just for demo purposes. So I'll set my username here. So I'll call it username. You also need to set the password. So such sensitive information, you can store them in properties file or encrypt them before using them in your code. So I'll have my password here, and then so I'll also define some properties. So I'll just do properties, props. So I want to set some email properties. Some of the properties we can set something like the transport protocol. So I'll just do dot put. So it's a key value. So I'll just do mail dot transport dot protocol. So we are using the SMTP protocol for sending the emails. Yeah. So I'll also set that authentication. I'll also set the auth property, so meaning it requires authentication. Set it to true. I'll also set the TLS. So I'll do SMTP start TLS. Enable and set it to true. And I'll also set SMTP SSL. So make sure you set these two properties. In some cases you might, depending on the mail server, it might not work when you only specify this. So some mail servers require that you enable this property. So I'll set it also to true. And then just for debugging purposes, though not advisable for production, I'll just set debug to true. This enables you to troubleshoot in case of any issues easily. Okay, so once you've done that, we're gonna define a message. So next we need to package our message. So I'll define another object here. I'll define another message here. Call it I can call it Java mail sender. Okay, then I can define a MIME message. So this is how you define that. So I'll do a MIME message preparator. Then I'll do, so I'm gonna define it as a lambda function so that we can put our logic inside here. Okay, so I have to terminate this. So inside the preparator, this is what we using this. We can now set the recipient. So remember, since you're sending only to one address for now, so I'll just set one recipient, and it expects us to set the recipient type too, and also the internet address. Now this will be the email, the property that we get from this email request object. That is the recipient. Okay, we also need to set from. So set from is where the email, so where the sender will see the source of that email. And in this case, I'll set it to, I can put demo email there, so I can do demo. So the user will see that is the source of the email. I can also set the subject, and the subject would be a string. So let me just do demo email, the attachment. Okay, so once that is done, I'll also put some message body. So set message. So in this case we'll set the text, and the text is what we receive from our object. We'll that get message, and then finally we need to attach an attachment. So I'll set the path of the file attachment. So the attachment, I'll just specify the path, and we say the path is in uploads. So remember the file that we had specified here, and the file is called names.csv. Okay, now to do that, okay, so first I'll set up a try catch, since you want to try and access a file. So I'll put an exception here. And then I'll print some structures, since I want to see any errors that come up. So here I'll do a file system. So I need to access a file, so I'll define a file in this manner. And then I'll do a file system resource. So this object is what I use to access, and it expects a parameter as file. So I'll define the file, and I specify the path to the file. So I can import this. Okay, so we can also check if the file exists, so that we don't get any exceptions. I'll just do can just check if a file exists. That's when I attach it. That's we can just output that file is not found. So here I'll define an object for the helper, and this is where so I'll attach the main message, and also specify that this is a multi-part true. So once that is done, I can use this helper object now to attach the file. I can set the file.getName, and the actual file is attached at this point. So this property setting text, I noticed that in some cases you are not able to send the email, so it's important to set this text property, but leave it empty, and set this other parameter to true, so that the message is sent as HTML. And I think this is it. This should allow you to send the email. So just make sure you set the properties correctly, and you should be able to send an email. So once that is done, you can try to run your project. Oh, we missed out one thing. So once you've done setting all these up, now you can send your email by using the Java mail sender now to send. So you can send this and use your preparator object, and that brings us to the end of that. So I'm gonna try to run it. Let's see if we have any errors. So if you've done it properly, your application should be able to start and run accordingly. Once you've run your project, then we can create a postman request. So we have the endpoint specified, and this is how our payload looks like. This is a message that you want to send, and the recipient email. So we expect a response that says email sent. So I'll just initiate the request here, and we should be able to see we get a response. Yeah, we got a response that says email has been sent. Checking at the logs, we can see that some email has been sent here. When we go to this email, you can also see that an email has been sent, and it has the same file name as names.csv. Thank you. See you in the next video, where we will see how we can do this asynchronously. Because currently how we've done it is we are handling the request synchronously, which is not very good for performance or high number of emails. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to handle these asynchronously with Spring Boot and RabbitMQ. Thank you.